What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. We are excited to have you. We're going to do some 49ers questions today from fans of the team. I almost said fans, but then I thought, we don't have fans. Fans of the team is what I mean. And all of you that are listening are 49ers fans. In case we have, occasionally we'll have some kind of fan from another team come in and try and get us stirred up, but we usually ignore them. So welcome all you 49ers fans, and anybody who's not a fan of the team, we welcome you as well. Just be nice and we'll be nice to you. I am your host, Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. I am joined by my co-host, Anthony Robertson of 49ers Cutback. Ant, how's it going, my friend?
It's going good, and this is a good time of the year because the 49ers are about to get into OTAs, mini camps, and then after that, it's going to be a long hiatus from normal content. So it's been fun. I've been taking time to go through the depth charts, and I've got through offensive line, defensive line, and it's been fun to kind of evaluate and get people's opinions. And 49er fans have a lot of opinions when it comes to who's going to start, when they're going to start, who's going to make this team. And I think that's a fun conversation right now and talking point, because we get into training camp, there's going to be some battles, and who wins is going to be one of the most interesting parts. Is it going to be the young guys? Is it going to be some of these guys that people don't believe should start, but the 49ers are going to start them anyways? I think it's a fun conversation.
Yeah, it is going to be fun. I always hate that time where we're after the June camp, the mandatory mini camp, and training camp. It's kind of always a boring time, but we'll do our best to make it fun. So we do have some here in the chat that have joined us. John's in here. Josh is in here. Lou's in here. Cynthia. Plenty of others watching that haven't commented yet. But so if you're watching live, then go ahead and jump in here. We're going to do a mailbag session. And so if you have questions, drop those in here and we'll get to them as we're able. Before we do that, want to just real quick, what's up, David? Just real quick, run through the current upcoming schedule for the 49ers this offseason. So they have OTAs starting. That's going to be going May 27th and 28th, also May 30th, June 2nd and 3rd, and then June 5th. Then the mandatory mini camp is June 10th and 11th. Right now, there are no dates that have been announced for training camp. There have been dates and times that have been announced for the preseason. I'll let you look those up. But I'm sure that we'll find out something about training camp dates shortly. It's always late July, somewhere around the 25th or so. I know that because that's my wedding anniversary, and usually we're out celebrating our anniversary when training camp is kicking off. So I always know about when that's going to be. And no, I don't skip my anniversary to pay attention to training camp. Maybe later or the next day, but that night I try to just focus on her. So we'll let you know. I'm sure you'll know long before we let you know about those training camp dates. But let's jump in. Again, if you have 49ers questions today that you'd like us, especially Ant, to answer, we will be happy to do that. We're going to get into our mailbag. I just today put out a mailbag for 49ers Web Zone. And so we're going to go off of that and answer some 49ers questions from fans. But again, if you have other ones, then jump in and we'll put a little star by it so that we can come back to it later. All right. So let me see. Yeah, we've already got a couple of questions in there. We'll get to y'all later. Thanks for everybody that's joining us live. And for those that are already busy in the chat, we will get to you. All right, here's the first question from Dave in the latest edition of the 49ers Web Zone mailbag, which you can find at 49erswebzone.com. This question: how do you imagine the wide receiver depth chart looking for week one behind Jennings and Pearsall? So the reason he asked behind Jennings and Pearsall is because Brandon Ayuk likely won't be ready for week one because of his knee injury. Also, Demarcus Robinson is probably going to start the season on the suspended list. We don't know yet if it's going to be 3 games, 4 games. I've heard both, so we'll have to see where we're at there. But most likely the 49ers are going to be without Brandon Ayuk and Demarcus Robinson in week 1. So let me give you a real quick list of the wide receivers currently on the team. So we have Ayuk, we have Robinson, we have Jauan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing, Russell Gage Jr., Isaiah Hodgins, Jordan Watkins, Tariq Owens, Isaiah Nair, Trent Taylor, and Junior Bergen. Now, here's how I see the depth chart. Ant, I want you to, I sent this to you earlier, so you'll have it in front of you. I want to see if you disagree with me on anything and what your thoughts are, because once Ayuk and Robinson return, then it's all bets off. I mean, I would assume Ayuk's going to take his starting position back, but I have Jennings and Pearsall as the starters on the outside. I know that Jennings primarily in his career has not played on the outside as much, but I think that he did a lot last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he
Okay.
did. Jauan Jennings played X a ton last year, which he didn't do in the past.
Right. So Jennings and Pearsall as the starters. The behind them is Gage, Hodgins, Watkins, Owens, and Nair. As the slot, I put Jacob Cowing in the slot. I don't know if that's where they've played him. Also, Trent Taylor and Junior Bergen, he played mostly in the slot in college, and so that's why I stuck him in the slot. When Ayuk returns, I think that maybe Jennings moves back to the slot. You can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think that Ayuk's going to take over his spot as the starting as a starter in the lineup. When Robinson returns from suspension, the question is he going to knock Ricky Pearsall out of the starting lineup? I don't think that he will. I think that Pearsall is going to grab onto that starting spot, and I don't think he's going to let go. But, I mean, with Jennings, if you're starting, you're talking Ayuk, Jennings, Pearsall. Maybe Pearsall starts and then Jennings starts and then Pearsall comes in. How do you see that? Because I'll admit, during the games, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to who's lining up where. I just pay attention once the ball's snapped. So how do you see the wide receiver depth?
Yeah, I think that first off, when the season starts, Jauan Jennings is going to have to play X because of the Demarcus Robinson suspension, the Brandon Ayuk injury. And so he's going to play X. And I think our Z is going to be Ricky Pearsall. So that'll be the 2 wide receivers in base sets. And then I think when they go to their 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, I think right now it looks like Jacob Cowing would be the third guy. They're pretty impressed about the way that he's reshaped his body. And I think he's going to get the first opportunity. Then he will play in the slot. You brought that up earlier, and I think you did a really good job with who you put in the slot, with it being Cowing and Taylor and Bergen, because all those guys are the guys that need a little bit of space to be able to develop and be able to get out into their routes. There are going to be guys that struggle with press coverage and things like that because of their size. So I think that that's the first thing. That question is going to be, what can Jordan Watkins be? What can he be out on the outside? Is he going to be a full X receiver? Or is he going to have to develop into a receiver who can play out to be able to, develop some space with some press release moves? That's what I'm going to be curious to see. I think that Marcus Robinson, I'm less worried about this wide receiver room. The first games, I'm pretty see what happens, and a little worried about what will happen with this receiver room. So I think early on, it's Jauan Jennings and it's Ricky Pearsall. But Jacob Cowing fit in. But I'm interested to see what happens with Isaiah Nair and Isaiah Hodgins and stuff, and people like that.
Okay, Ant, good stuff, but I only caught part of that. You're really in and out, and I see people in the chat saying the same thing. So I'm going to need you to go out and then come back in. I'm going to move on to that second question. When you come back in, make sure you catch up with some of these questions that are being asked here. So, all right, here's the second question. And I think that Ant said pretty much the same thing that I had already said with the wide receivers. But I always like getting his thoughts because he's so much better at that stuff than I am. I'm more of a news guy. He's more of the film breakdown, and so I feel like that's why we work really well together. So here's the second question. This is from Lowbridge. In your opinion, which rookie will have the biggest impact this season? I feel like Martin is going to play a big role and get a lot of attention. So definitely, I think that Mykel Williams, I think that he's going to have the biggest impact. He's not only a great talent, lot of talent with this guy, but I think that he feels a need that the 49ers definitely need to fill, and that's stopping the run. I believe he's going to help Robert Saleh's defense right out of the gate. I think that Nick Martin is another good candidate when he was healthy at Oklahoma State, and I think that we saw an Oklahoma State somebody in here in the chat. 805 Blackbird looks like an OSU. I don't know if that's an OSU. Maybe not. It was black and orange, so that's what I thought it was, but it may not be. But when he was at Oklahoma State, he was a difference maker. I like D. Winters a lot. I think that he arrives with some physicality. He's got good speed. He's all over the field, but he's missed a lot of time because of injury, and he's just not as consistent as I'd like to be. So I think that it's possible that Nick Martin could eventually be that Dre Greenlaw replacement that we're wanting. If I could throw in a third name, I think I might throw in CJ West. I want to say Alfred Collins, but the fact that he's already missed time with an injury makes me a little concerned, especially in year one. So I'm going to throw out CJ West, partly because he's big. He's the type of body that the 49ers need in the middle to clog up lanes. Last year, opposing offenses gashed the 49ers in the run game. And I think that CJ West can do a lot to help keep that from happening. That's what we need to see for the 49ers. But I still think that Mykel Williams is going to be the biggest difference maker as a rookie for the 49ers in 2025. So Ant's not back yet, but we will. I'll backtrack on this question and get him to see what he says. Got some questions in here. Yeah, a lot of you mentioned that there's a lot there was a lag, some bad connection going on. Ant has dropped out of the chat to try and fix that, and so hopefully he'll be back here real soon. So the next question's from Shock Max, and again, these are from the 49ers Web Zone mailbag. He says, this is his question. Purdy is now locked up as the franchise quarterback, and Warner is also signed to a new deal. Do you think the 49ers will extend Jauan Jennings next? And what do you think that deal would look like? So my heart wants to say, yes, Jauan Jennings is going to be next. The thing that keeps me from saying that is that last year, Jauan Jennings was great, and he came out. That was his coming out party, his best season as a pro. Unfortunately for 49ers fans is that now that I think he's a free agent after this coming season, and so, yeah, he's up for a new deal potentially, but he's probably, because he played like a number one last year, he's going to want to be paid like a number one. He believes that he's wide receiver one. And so when Ayuk is back and healthy, what's that going to look like? Is Jauan Jennings going to be wide receiver one? Is Brandon Ayuk going to be wide receiver one? In 2023, it was Brandon Ayuk. Last year, with an Ayuk that was coming off of a long holdout or hold in, however you want to put that, and then his injury, Jennings really stepped up and became the guy. So I think that Jennings showed that he can be a wide receiver one. The question is, will John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan see him as a number one? Or will they assume that Brandon Ayuk is going to come back and take that spot? I don't know. I mean, you saw what Jennings did last year. We already know he's the best blocking wide receiver in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So Tommy is in the chat. He says that the Jennings is gone. And that's my concern. That Josh said, if I'm Jauan Jennings, I'm waiting and testing free agency. Again, that's what I'm worried about, is that he's going to say, I'm a number one. The 49ers are going to say, nah, Ayuk's our number one. You're really a number two. In the past, you've been a number three, and that's how we're going to pay you. So to me, that's my prediction, is that Jennings, being that he's going to be a free agent next March, I think that they're probably not going to want to pay him wide receiver one money unless they go into next offseason and they've traded Ayuk, or if they trade Ayuk during the season, who knows? But do the 49ers think Ayuk is the number one, or is Jennings the number one? I really don't see them paying both. And so I think that if they have to decide who they're going to keep, maybe they'll want to trade Ayuk, but they haven't been able to trade, or they haven't been willing to trade him. I should say that, because they did have trade partners willing to trade for him before the 2024 season. So I don't know what that's going to look like, and that doesn't even mention the fact that that Jed York tightened the belt this offseason. He's forked out nearly $1 billion in contracts with the 49ers and got no Super Bowl championship in return. So was the 2025 belt tightening just a 1-year thing, or is it possible that that this is the new way of doing business for the 49ers? I hope that that's not the new way of doing things, because certainly we don't want to see that. Randy Taylor says, like Jauan Jennings, but he deserves a nice payday. Absolutely, he does. Josh said, I hate the Ayuk deal more and more, even though I like Ayuk. Yeah, I don't know if they could go back and when Kyle got Ayuk on the phone, or however that worked, and he ran upstairs to stop the Ayuk trade, if he would have tripped, or if he would have missed the elevator, or however that worked, if that wouldn't have happened, would the 49ers be happier now if Ayuk was somewhere else? Would they be in a better situation? I don't know, but yeah. So the question is, Jauan Jennings the next extension? I hope so, but I'm going to predict that he's not. I just don't think that he's going to be the next guy. So David Campbell said Jed's forked out $1 billion in payroll, but the team's value has gone up 400%. Yeah, I mean, it's not like they can't afford it, but for some reason they wanted this offseason, they wanted to cut those salaries. So we'll have to see. Not so much cut the salaries, but cut the payroll. Next question is from Sarah G. She asked, it was reported that Brock Purdy asked for $65 million per year. Would you still have wanted him to be the 49ers quarterback at that price? Well, first off, I don't know for certain that Brock Purdy asked for 65. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know, but at 65 million, and I'm interested to see what people here in the chat are saying. I don't think that I would want Brock Purdy at 65 million. I was hoping all along that his annual salary would come in under 55. I just felt like that was going to be the best thing for the team. When you're paying Ant's back, so we'll get to some of those questions that he missed. Ant, we're on the question about if Purdy was, whether or not he asked for 65 million, we don't know. But the question was, would you still want him to be the 49ers quarterback at that price? I'm saying no, primarily because my hope all along was that he would be under 55, because I just think that as you crawl up higher than 55, especially if you get to that 60 like Dak Prescott is at, it's really hard to build a good roster around him. Now, I know the cap can be manipulated. Things can change. You can do all kinds of things, but it's just no. I would not want him to be at 50 or at 65. And Mr. Joe in the chat said 45 for Mahomes, and Purdy wants 65. Yeah, I agree with this take that it's just not, to me, it's not feasible. But again, there are cap people who might argue that, yeah, you can manipulate that. You can do all kinds of things. What do you say? I mean, that would be 12 million above what he ended up getting.
I think it's just a negotiation ploy. You see how much you can ask for. $65 million is a lot of money. That would have reset the market. And I don't think the 49ers were prepared to pay a quarterback $65 million. But I think Brock Purdy and his team knew that. They knew that was never going to be the case. But realistically, what the 49ers start at? 45? I know we heard 49, but I'm guessing 45 million, 65 million. You kind of try to figure out how to meet in the middle, and I'm sure that's what they were doing with these negotiations. So, no, I don't think the 49ers would pay Brock Purdy $65 million. I don't think that's a smart way to do business, and I think they've learned their lesson on overpaying some players in the past. So, even when they reset the market now with George Kittle, it was just barely. When they reset the market with Fred Warner, it was just barely 1 million over. And so they're doing right by their players, but they're not going to pay a quarterback $65 million unless it's 5 years from now or 3 years from now when they renegotiate with Brock Purdy and the market goes crazy. Maybe then he'll be worth $65 million. But I don't think any quarterback in the league is worth $65 million right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I want to remind you that we do have people in the chat asking questions. So if you get a chance to go back and put us and star some of those,
we'll do that.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and ask just real quick for your thoughts on. The first question you missed was which rookie will have the biggest impact this season. This is from Lowbridge. I feel like Nick Martin is going to play a big role and get a lot of attention. I mentioned Mykel Williams. I think that he's going to have the biggest impact. I thought that Nick Martin is another good candidate. I mentioned CJ West because of, and these are primarily because of the run defense needing to get better. So which rookie do you think will have the biggest impact in 2025?
I think it's going to be Mykel Williams. I think Mykel Williams, he's going to have the most opportunity. I think him and Alfred Collins are going to have the most opportunity. But I think Mykel Williams is set up the best to be able to make a lot of plays. And playing out on the edge, getting some space, playing in a different type of look than he played in college, playing that wide nine, I think is going to be very impactful for him. But I think right away, he's at least a very good run stopper that helps you on first and second down and then maybe gives you some pass rush as the season progresses. But I do think he's going to be a better pass rusher than we saw in college just because of the space and where he's able to rush from. Rushing from a 4-eye is a lot different than rushing from a wide 9. 4-eye, you're inside shade of the tackle. There's just a lot more help. The guard's right there. The tackle's got a little bit of a different play against you. So it makes it easier for them to be able to play you. But I think in the NFL game, playing the wide 9, I think that's going to give him an advancement in his ability to get after the quarterback. I like his athleticism in space. So I'm going Mykel Williams, and I think Alfred Collins would kind of be number 2. I think they're going to have the opportunity for the most playing time, and really they are the guys the 49ers need to step up big along that defensive line. I think they could make a huge impact in year 1.
Yeah, I mentioned that I wanted to say Alfred Collins, but the fact that he already has an injury made me go CJ West instead as one of my 3. But I said Williams was the one that I thought the most. The next question that you missed was from Shock Max asking if Jauan Jennings is going to be the next extension. I said that I hope that he is. My heart wants it to happen, but that I thought I just don't know that's going to happen because of the Brandon Ayuk contract, and I just don't see them paying 2 players wide receiver 1 money. I think that Jennings believes he's a wide receiver 1. Don't know if Kyle and John think that, but as much as I want it to happen, I predicted that it won't unless they trade Ayuk, and then that definitely could happen. What do you think?
I think it's going to be hard for Jauan Jennings to get wide receiver 1 on the open market too. I don't think that teams are going to see him as an elite X receiver. Do I think he's somebody that can get it done? I do. Do I think he's somebody that wins on third down and gets third down conversions? Yes. He can win in the red zone. He's going to make some big plays for your team. But I think he is a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. I think this is you look back at some of the great, number 2 wide receivers that were never able to make it at number 1. A guy that I always think of right away is a guy like Alvin Harper, for the Dallas Cowboys. He's a great number 2. As soon as he goes to Tampa Bay, he absolutely struggles. I don't think Jauan would struggle that much because his role would be very defined, but I just don't think the 49ers were going to pay him wide receiver 1 money, and I don't think the league is either. He is a valuable commodity. I'd love to see the 49ers be able to keep him. I think he's going to be a little bit more difficult to hang on to, though, now, because this is the time he needs to go cash in. This is his career contract that he needs to get. And so I think that he's going to be looking for the most money, and I don't know if the 49ers are going to offer him the most money, but it's going to be very determined. And I think Jauan Jennings would be smart by doing this, is to go do what Deommodore Lenoir did last year. Play out most of the year of the contract, see what the 49ers offer him, but also the same way the 49ers are going to let Jauan do that, they're also going to be evaluating their young guys. What is Ricky Pearsall doing? How is Brandon Ayuk getting healthy? That's where they're going to make a decision on Jauan Jennings. I think somewhere in the middle of the season, one or both these guys are going to make a decision, either test free agency or for the 49ers to allow Jauan Jennings to test free agency, because they just can't afford to pay too many players at the position high money.
Yeah, and then a lot of that depends on what Jacob Cowing looks like. How does Jordan Watkins look? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there for sure. The next question is from Sasha, who asks, if Isaiah Nair is looking good at the rookie minicamps, how did he become an undrafted rookie? With that being said, the wide receiver room is about to become crowded with Nair and the emergence of Tariq Owens. Who would be the odd man out? So I mentioned earlier that right now there are 12 wide receivers on the 49ers roster. If Brandon Ayuk and if Demarcus Robinson don't start the season counting toward that 53-man roster, then you're looking at 10. If the 49ers keep only 6, right now that means that 6 are going away. If you're not counting Ayuk and Robinson, then that means 4 are not going to make, and so probably would end up on the practice squad. I really liked Nair. We talked about him a few weeks ago. He was the one of the undrafted rookies that I liked the most, mainly because of his size and speed. But there's a reason that players go undrafted usually. Sometimes you see a player overcome that, but most of the time they don't. So I would not expect Isaiah Nair to make the team right out of the gate. Tariq Owens has come in. Last year he was cut and brought back to the practice squad, but so he has an uphill battle himself, but he is a year ahead of Isaiah Nair. If I'm going to say that the 4 that I think are really, Jacob Cowing has to be better. He's going to have to be better blocking. He's going to have to be better at knowing the plays, and I do expect that he's going to be better at both of those. So I would say that Nair, Owens, Trent Taylor, and Isaiah Hodgins are in danger for sure. All 4 of those could end up being cut. Now, I think that they would want all 4 on the practice squad. But how do you see that working out? Who do you think is the odd man out or the odd men in this case, since they do have so many? And that's not even to talk about some of the wide receivers that they have been rumored to be interested in.
Yeah, I think there's always the possibility they still add to this wide receiver room, especially if they're looking for an X receiver while Brandon Ayuk's out. And I think we have all kind of come to grips with the fact that Ayuk is going to start the season on the PUP or the NFI, whatever classification that ends up being. And then I think after that, Demarcus Robinson, there will be an exemption if he is suspended, and the 49ers will be able to keep extra wide receivers, which I think they will do. And after that, it gets interesting. We know the guys that will make it. We know it's going to be Jauan Jennings. We know it'll be Ricky Pearsall. We know it'll be Jacob Cowing, and we know it'll be Jordan Watkins. And then I think after that, there is 2 roster spots until Ayuk and Demarcus Robinson get back. And I think in this case, you look for guys who fit specific roles, but also a special teams role. You're not going to be able to keep multiple guys for special teams reasons. What is Bergen going to do? Is Bergen going to be that return guy that the 49ers are hoping he can be? If he is, then he's going to lock down one of these spots, especially early in the season. They might just give him a chance. I think after that, you got to naturally think a guy like Tariq Owens, because he was on the practice squad all year. In fact, you had to waive him with an injury designation last year, and he still made it back to your practice squad. You can probably put him on the practice squad. The question with Isaiah Neyor, and I think this is one of the ones that's the most interesting, is yes, there hasn't been a lot of experience when it came to playing Division I, FBS football. And so you had not a lot of opportunities. He was injured at Texas, never really got an opportunity there. They had big time receivers. Goes to Nebraska. I don't think it was a season that everyone thinks is explosive or dynamic, but you see those abilities. And that's going to be one of the things the 49ers are going to be really struggling with. Do we hold on to this guy because of what he could be? And I think that's going to be interesting because a guy like Isaiah Hodgins or a guy like Russell Gage might fit this system a little bit more. Hodgins could take over that Chris Conley role, which I think you really need in this system. So there is going to be a unique battle at wide receiver. And because of the injury to Brandon Ayuk and the suspension potentially of Demarcus Robinson, they're going to probably keep 8 receivers on their roster initially until they have to make a decision when Demarcus Robinson starts to come back. So there's going to be a lot of these guys on the team. It's just a question of how they go this makeup. And I don't think we can count out these veterans like Russell Gage, Trent Taylor, or Isaiah Hodgins as part of the potential, even though we got a lot of young guys we really like.
Yeah, I said a few weeks ago that I just didn't like when we were breaking down the draft picks. I didn't think that Junior Bergen was going to make the team because that's going to take up another wide receiver spot, and he's primarily a punt returner. He played wide receiver in college, of course, but I just don't know that the 49ers are going to use him in that capacity. But it sounds like Brant Boyer handpicked him. And if that's the case, then I think he's going to make the team. And so, or at least he's going to have a really good shot at making the team. So, and Josh just said that in the chat that Bergen's a Brant Boyer pick. So again, yeah, he's right. John in the chat said, we've seen undrafted free agents come into Kyle Shanahan's offense and flourish. How do we know Neyor won't? Yeah, we don't know that. And the guy has the physical tools to do it. But again, there's a reason that he went undrafted. And so whatever that reason is, if it rears its ugly head in training camp and preseason, then he's going to have a hard time making it right out of the gate. So I do think that it's an uphill climb for him. So let me move on to the next question. This is from Kate. Which recent signing, Purdy, Kittle, Warner, was the most important, and which surprised you the most? I think that we knew all of them were coming, so they weren't really a surprise to me. And as far as which is the most important, obviously your quarterback. That everything rises or falls on who's your signal caller. And so to me, the most important was Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy is definitely the most important. And the 49ers have had a hard time locating that franchise quarterback. They thought it was going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think everything about 2017 illustrated it was going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. He did get the 49ers to a Super Bowl. We got to give him credit for that. Question marks, of course, about how much is Jimmy and how much is the team. But he was pulling the trigger. And we've seen the 49ers not be able to get there when they don't have a quarterback that's capable. And so they've been looking for this guy, and they found it in Brock Purdy. Pick 262. I do believe he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. I think he's getting paid as such. But we've seen the ability for him to lead a team to where they want to go, whether it was 2022 when he stepped in Week 13 and took this team all the way to the NFC Championship game. And I would contend if he doesn't get hurt by Hassan Reddick, there's a good chance the 49ers win the Super Bowl in 2022. That team was absolutely stacked If you look at the team overall, they still had guys like Aziz Al-Shire, and they still had all these talented guys that ended up moving on. That was probably the best incarnation of the 49ers, better than the 23 team. Even though the 23 team played better, there was just less question marks at quarterback. So now they stabilize quarterback. That's going to help everything. That now you can build an offense around Brock Purdy and his strengths and the things that he's going to do well. So I think this was something you had to figure out. And then the other two are just complete pillars. They're going to go into the Hall of Fame as San Francisco 49ers. They're the best at their position in the NFL, and they fall kind of next. But it had to be the quarterback. That's definitely the most important. It's the most important position in all of football. You either have one or you're looking for one, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, Notorious in the chat said the signing of Juice was the most surprising. Who thought Juice was coming back? Not me. Yeah, I think the question was geared more toward the recent with Purdy, Kittle, and Warner, but certainly, yeah, you're right. Nobody expected Juice to come back. Last question that I want to get to here before we get to those in the chat comes from Dave. Where do you think Purdy ranks among NFL quarterbacks? Look, since his rookie season, he's consistently ranked among the top quarterbacks. PFF has had him in the top 13 to 14, but I don't think that that PFF grades tell the whole story. In 2023, that's obviously Purdy's best season. He led the NFL in touchdown percentage, yards per attempt, average yards per attempt, yards per completion, quarterback rating, and QBR. He was also a Pro Bowler and fourth in the MVP voting. Now, 2024 was a down year for Purdy, but it was a down year for the 49ers in general. So I definitely believe that he's a top 10 quarterback. You just mentioned that you thought that he was as well. His numbers suggest it. His team's success in 2022 and 2023 also suggested. And I think we mentioned this last week, that he left the Super Bowl twice with the lead late in the game, where he had given his team the lead. And I mean, if we don't have a missed assignment by a backup guard, then he may have left the field that the final time in that game as a champion. And so that doesn't even mention, like, in the game against Green Bay, he's having a bad game. The ball's wet. He's not playing his best, but he brings them back and wins the game. Detroit, they're down big at halftime. He comes back. Yeah, the Brandon Ayuk catch was a lucky one, but there was also pass interference on the play. And so, like, in the end, he still got the job done. And I realize that there are people who don't like him, who don't believe in him. Some are 49ers fans. Some are in the national media. I don't care. So far, he's gotten the job done. 2024, we're going to find out. Is that just one of those seasons that happened? Or is that what Brock Purdy is? Or is he more like the 22-23 version? I tend to think that that's the Brock Purdy. Remember, he's only 25. He's going to get better. So I think that he is for sure a top 10 quarterback. I don't know that I'd put him top 5. He's performed like a top 5 at times, but I don't know that I'm ready to put him there yet, just because you have some really good ones ahead of him. Where do you think he ranks? You said that he was a top 10. Do you think he gets close to that top 5 yet?
I think it's tough because the top 4 guys are definitely known. You got Patrick Mahomes, you got Joe Burrow, you got Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Those guys are a cut above. Those are the elite quarterbacks of this league. And then I think after that, that's where the conversation starts to take off. How much credence do you give a guy like Jaden Daniels after 1 year? We started to do that with CJ Stroud, and then last year Stroud kind of came back to earth with that sophomore slump. You got a Justin Herbert who is really good in the regular season, but then when he gets to the playoffs, we don't know. He can't win. They don't do anything. So there's question marks about these guys. There's not question marks about a guy like Brock Purdy winning, and a guy like Brock Purdy doing well in the playoffs. 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in his career in the playoffs. And he talked about this on 95.7 The Game, because a lot of people are bringing up the weather concerns. The fact that, he won in Seattle the first, super wild card weekend that he was quarterback in 2022. He won that game against Green Bay where weather was a little bit of concern, and he went out there and he made some key throws. So I think that Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback. I kind of put him in that 7 to 10 ratio. like kind of in that department, because I think that, right now other guys have kind of been able to win a little bit more, maybe get a Super Bowl. But I think that with a Super Bowl win, he could cement himself as one of those top guys, because I think it's interesting when people argue the effectiveness of Brock Purdy. One of the things they talk about is the fact that, he doesn't have a good offensive line. And then they also talk about how Brock Purdy's not a dynamic player, yet he's able to make up for the inefficiencies of offensive line. So Brock Purdy is a guy that can definitely win a game for you if you need him to make a big play. I think he proved that with some key runs against Detroit. You talked about the Super Bowl. I think he's at 7 to 10 range, and I think that's a good place for the 49ers and what they paid him. I think they're getting a lot of value for that. And I think 7 to 10 is a good ratio for a guy that can come in and win a Super Bowl for you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you want to put him right up there with Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, those guys that people talk about. Yet I really don't care about the arm strength and the size and all that, because he plays bigger than he is. Joe Montana didn't have the greatest arm strength, although his arm was definitely underrated. Montana was never as talented as Steve Young, but he was the GOAT until people started calling Tom Brady that. And so I don't worry too much about that kind of stuff. So, all right, let's get to some of these questions in our chat. And we're running low on time, so we're going to have to fly through these. Josh asks, who's the starting left guard in week 1? That's his burning question. I'm going to say Ben Bartch. Who do you say? I'm not hearing you. I think you're muted.
Yeah. I'm going to say Spencer Burford.
Wow. Okay.
I think it's going to be a tough battle, but I'm going to go that Burford figured it out. And I won't be shocked. I think you might be right that it's Bartch, but I want to kind of throw something out there, a little bit of a different thought process, in that Burford gets it done.
All right. Notorious said, who do you think should be the boombox walkout with Debo gone, or should we just let the boombox entrance rot? All right, so Trent Williams is still there. If they keep it, I'm going to say Jauan Jennings.
Yeah, Jauan Jennings is a good choice. I'm going with Ricky Pearsall as the guy.
That's a good one.
Give it about 5 weeks, and then Upton Stout and CJ West start finding their way up there as well. Upton Stout is going to have a ton of swag, so I think he'll be up there with Ricky pretty soon dancing.
All right, that's great. Lowbridge asks, who wins left guard? We already talked about that. Does Hennessy get a real chance to compete for center?
I don't think so. I don't think he gets a real shot. I think that they will look at him at center and guard, because they do it'll either be him or Nick Zakelj that gets that position, because you have to have that swing guy, and Feliciano is gone. But I think that they're just invested in Jake Brendel, whether we like it or not.
He asked another question. Who do you think the biggest surprise cut could be? I'm going to say Jacob Cowing. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's going to be my prediction.
I am going to say, I don't know how surprising it'll be, but I'm going to go with Kalia Davis. I think that they had invested a lot in him, and I think that he might be on his way out this season.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. And I think that Jacob Cowing's going to be better. I'm just throwing that out. Lou asks, Keenan Allen was mentioned. Is he a fit or too much? I think he's probably too much.
Yeah, he is a fit. To answer that part of the question, he would make a lot of sense. But financially, what is that money going to look like? I don't think the 49ers want to invest a lot of money at wide receiver. That's why I wonder about Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. I'm not sure that those guys make a lot of sense. That's why when you're talking about cheaper options, it does make sense.
Yeah. Eric in the chat asking, Niner Brass needs to keep building, keep an eye out for other teams' cuts. We missed out on a lot of undrafted free agents for cheap. That's not really a question, but yeah.
Pretty good comment.
Yeah. Notorious, how can we go out and get a big salary wide receiver when we couldn't pay Huff and Greenlaw? Again, I don't think that they're going to pay a lot for a receiver.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think that's why we haven't seen them involved in Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen. I know we're starting to hear that mentioned, but those weren't the guys they brought in for a workout, right? They brought in guys who have been cut, who are probably going to be cheap. And I think that's probably the way they go. And because really they like DeMarcus Robinson, they're just a suspension. They have to get through that.
Filthy Casual asks, is Jauan Jennings going to be wide receiver 1 at the start of the season? Shouldn't he get, maybe he meant if Jauan Jennings is going to be wide receiver 1 at the start of the season, shouldn't he get extended? I think that we've mentioned this, that he's probably only going to be wide receiver 1 until Brandon Ayuk comes back, unless Ayuk isn't able to come back to wide receiver ability. And if Jennings stays that, then yeah, I would agree that he should get extended. But as you mentioned earlier, he's probably not going to get wide receiver money elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that the 49ers would love, in a perfect world, to extend Jauan Jennings. That's what they've continued to do. The question is he outperformed now what they can afford to pay? And I think he did. Last year, nearly getting 1,000 yards in that season. I think that there's going to be somebody that's willing to pay him pretty good money to be wide receiver 2, and that'll probably price out the 49ers. If they didn't have the current contract with Brandon Ayuk, I would say they would re-sign Jauan Jennings. And like you brought up earlier in the show, if they did move Brandon Ayuk, then I could see them paying Jauan Jennings. But it's just tough ass to pay a wide receiver that much money and have that much committed to the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw him pay Debo and Ayuk, and then they moved on from Debo. Now, partly that could have been because Debo regressed and because Debo wanted out, but it is hard to pay two number 1 receivers or a 1 and 2 like they were. Papa J asks, in your opinion, will Chris Forster ever be on the hot seat, or does he, for some reason, have job security? He's considered one of the best in the NFL. And if you take a look at what he's done because everybody talks about how the 49ers haven't invested in offensive line, yet he's able to piece them together well enough to get them by. Now, it does seem to bite them in those big games like in the Super Bowl. But so I don't know that they're going to be wanting to move on from Chris Forster anytime soon, because I think that he is a good offensive line coach. Now, is he the best? No, but he's done well with just a little. I mean, I think that we sometimes compare guys like Forster to Bob McKittrick, who did more than we've seen with less. But there's McKittricks don't come along very often.
No, and Chris Forster is more than just an offensive line coach for the 49ers. He's also run game coordinator. This guy puts together, the run game plans. And in fact, Mike McDaniel credits Chris Forster with teaching him the ins and the outs of building a run game before he took that role. They were, Mike McDaniel had Chris Forster and vice versa in each other's wedding. So this dude is tied into the 49ers organization. I know McDaniel's moved on, but Forster and Kyle Shanahan are tied together. And the things that Forster believes align with what Kyle Shanahan believes when it comes to offensive line. And so I don't think that he's going to be a hot seat anytime soon. And I think that Kyle Shanahan believes that they actually get more out of this offensive line than they probably should. So that's not usually a reason to fire someone. If he had first-round talent across the board and they were underperforming, that would be reason for hot seat. But when you're getting guys in the mid-rounds and they're still able to do it, it kind of screams to job security.
Yeah. Filthy Casual asks, is Wishnowsky healthy? I haven't heard, but I would assume that he is.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan had said Mitch was healthy right now. So it's a back, so that's always concerning. But if it wasn't, they would have a different punter right now. They would have went out and got somebody and moved on from Mitch, because they can't have inconsistencies at punter.
Notorious asks, will Jake Moody win the kicking battle at camp? Oh man, I'm gonna say that he will, because he's a great practice kicker. He does have veteran competition and rookie competition, but I still think that Moody wins the competition.
I do as well. I don't think they brought in a guy that's going to push Jake Moody to the. It's not one of those veterans that you feel like can consistently win and consistently kick comfortably. I think Jake Moody is going to feel more comfortable with Wishnowsky back holding, the John Weeks being the long snapper. I think the whole process is going to be a little bit better. So I do believe Jake Moody will win this kicking battle. And I don't think it's going to be much of a battle. I just think Jake Moody is going to be consistent during, training camp and preseason. My question is going to be what's going to happen when you get to the regular season, because that's been the issue for Jake Moody.
All right, so in the chat, and we're almost finished here. I don't know if this is Herbman or Herbman, but he says Chris Furster is a running joke. Then he says, let's see if PureSoft, wow, can replace Big Debo. All right, so let me first, I want to first address that one. To call Ricky Pearsall PureSoft, can he replace Big Debo? Big Debo was hurt more than Ricky Pearsall, who took a bullet and still played. So that's all I'm going to say about Ricky Pearsall. I think that he's shown his toughness. And I think that Debo showed his toughness as well, but he was hurt all the time. I get it. He plays in a way that's for sure going to bring about that kind of I don't know if you want to respond to either of those comments or not, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think Ricky Pearsall's soft by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you look at his film when he was at Florida, when he's with the 49ers, is the guy's willing to go up for contested catches and take contact. He doesn't shy away from that. So I don't really get the soft comparison. I do think it's going to be tough shoes to fill when it comes to filling Debo's role. But he's not going to be asked to do the same things for sure that Debo did. He's a different type of player. But I think everyone's going to grow to love Pearsall, his toughness, his aggressiveness, the fact that he's willing to go over the middle and make plays. I think is going to give everyone the Jauan Jennings and Debo feel as far as they're willing to take contact. So no, I don't get the that part of the Pearsall comment, but it is going to be tough shoes to fill with Debo being gone because Debo did bring an attitude and edge to the 49ers offense. That's for sure.
All right, last one. John asks, who will replace Debo, Watkins, Bergen, or incumbent Cowing? Nobody's going to replace what Debo did, I don't think. But I mean, Watkins, he's a different type of player. Bergen, I think they could use Bergen like they used Debo. Cowing, I think he's going to have to get bigger and stronger. I mean, and I don't know how easy that's going to be. He definitely can get stronger, but Debo was just like a bowling ball. When he would be at his best, he was like a runaway train. And so none of these guys are going to be doing what Debo did.
Yeah, it's completely different. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to fulfill some of the Debo role at certain times. I think Jauan Jennings is going to handle some of it. I do think Pearsall, Cowing. I think when you look at Bergen, I think he is a lot like Ray McLeod. If you were going to put a comparison, and Ray would play the Debo role at times, but it's a little bit different. Now, when you're talking about just the Debo position, Debo played Z. And so that will be Ricky Pearsall, especially early in the season. That's why they drafted him. He was the eventual replacement for Debo Samuel when it came to Z. But like Strawberry React said in chat, Pearsall's a different type of receiver. He can win against man coverage a little bit better, create a little bit more separation. You're just not going to get the dynamic yards after the catch like Debo. There's nobody that takes the ball from a 4-yard throw to a 60-yard touchdown the way Debo does because of his ability in the open field. But we're going to get some pros and some cons from the adjustment. It doesn't mean it's going to be good or bad. I think it will be just different. And I think that that's going to be fun to see how Pearsall develops in the system as he plays Z and kind of translates into that Debo wide receiver role, not the Debo extra, the wide back stuff. That's going to be completely, a lot of it eliminated or fall on Christian McCaffrey.
I tell you what I would like to see. I'd like to see a little bit more of McCaffrey in the slot or in those Debo roles when they have Garindo in the backfield or one of these rookies. I think that'll be interesting to see. I wanted to see them do that some with some of the guys like Elijah Mitchell before, but he was hurt so much after McCaffrey came along. But that would have been pretty cool to see. I just don't know if Kyle, he doesn't seem to be that interested in having another running back in the backfield other than Juszczyk when he's got McCaffrey in the game. But man, the things that he could do with McCaffrey and with Garindo or with James or one of these other guys, I'd love to see what he could do creatively with them.
Yeah, he fooled around a little bit with Elijah Mitchell in the 2022 season. Elijah Mitchell would come in with Christian McCaffrey. it's all about what personnel grouping Kyle's going to get from the defense. If he puts 2 running backs out there with Christian McCaffrey and they say, okay, McCaffrey's a running back, and you get a base set where you're going to get a 3-4 or 4-3 defense, then you've got a favorable matchup for Christian McCaffrey in the slot, or a favorable run matchup if they go nickel. Those are going to be the things that tip him one way or the other. He's looking for an advantage. And so if he's going to get an advantage, then he will use those sets. If he's not going to get an advantage, he won't. So that's going to be one of the keys. If people respect Garendo and they think that he could be a dynamic runner and he can have some big runs, they might keep their base defense out there and allow some favorable matchups for Christian McCaffrey in the slot. Then we might see more of it. So that's something to watch. And I wouldn't put it against Kyle Shanahan to see that and say, hey, you know what? This gives us an advantage when it comes to our personnel versus theirs. And we can see it from time to time, because I'm with you. I think that would be fun to kind of have some 2 running back roles out there. Not Kyle Juszczyk, but 2 tailbacks. I think that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I do too. That's all we have. We took a lot of time today answering your questions and those from the 49ers Web Zone mailbag. We appreciate everybody who's watching, listening, or especially those that were in the chat asking questions today. That was a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Please take a minute to like and subscribe to both channels. Really helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. Thanks again. Have a great week. We'll be back. Actually, I won't be here next Sunday. My daughter's graduating from high school, so it's going to be a couple of weeks till we're back, but I'm sure y'all can still carry on with your lives, and it won't hurt you that much. Thanks for joining us.